I'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsor. If you have a laser device for training and you want to take it to the next level, or if you're looking to get into using a laser device for training, check out the products at laserapp.com. LASRAPP.com. You can use code CSP2021 for 15% off the items you've selected. And thanks for checking them out. Welcome to this week's edition of the Casual Shooters Podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. This week you have me, Dave, your host, and a guest. This week's guest, though, has a list of accomplishments that would take me about 15 minutes to read. So we're not going to do all of that. All I'm going to tell you is he's a 3-time world champion, 24-time national champion. Suffice it to say that there isn't anything he hasn't accomplished in the field of competition shooting that he hasn't attempted. Our guest this week is none other than Robert Vogel. How you doing, Robert?
Hey, pretty good. Pretty good. How are you?
Good. Hope I wasn't too far off on your intro there.
No, that sounded great to me.
Okay.
Glad to be here. So, yeah.
The interwebs are full of information these days. So
yeah, they definitely are, aren't they?
All right. So what we normally do is we start off with some 5 personal questions.
Okay.
Kind of get to know our guest. And these are usually the hardest questions they have through the entire interview right here.
All righty. Well, I'll do my best.
Okay. Number 1, what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie of all time, I would have to say Lonesome Dove in 1989 with Robert Vogel. A 5-hour miniseries. I watched that so many times since I was a kid. My dad's favorite movie, and got a little bit of life in it. Just it's not like over the top crazy. It's more like what could really happen. And if I'd pick one, that's what I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when that came out. That was a little ways back.
Yeah. See, I was about 8, I think, but.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to say how old I was. I was definitely older than 8. All right. Your favorite book?
My favorite book, I would say a book called The Deadliest Men. And I still have kind of facing in front of my bookshelf. I think I was probably a teenager when I read it. It just like profiled, I think, 50 of like the deadliest men, a lot of like warriors and whatnot throughout history and back hundreds of years. And I would say that one, even though I haven't read it in a few years.
Okay. All right. Now, one of the other co-hosts, he likes to ask, so we added it into our list of questions, which is, who is your favorite superhero?
Boy, that one, I don't know that I have an answer for because I never really got into that. I think maybe when I was a kid I did, but I guess I would have to even wonder what is considered a superhero.
We've had a lot of different answers.
Yeah. I would have said, if you asked me who my hero was growing up, I would have said Davy Crockett. Even though he was a real person, a superhero, but that's those answers I got.
Okay. I like it. I'll go with that. I mean, we've gotten everything from Aquaman to Zorro. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know who those are, but never really got into that stuff too much.
Yeah, me either. All right. So I think I know half of the answer to this one. Favorite gun and favorite caliber. They don't have to be, you could have your favorite caliber could be .308 and Glock could be your favorite gun. So.
Okay. Favorite gun and favorite caliber, man. Yeah, it's another one I wouldn't necessarily have an answer. I mean, Glock, obviously, I would say gun-wise, that's what I've shot for most of my career, and I would say that. Favorite caliber, man. I'd say my 1.5 gauge shotgun because that's probably one of the most unique ones that I have. So
okay,
that's what I would say. It's a punt gun, 1.5 gauge. Yeah,
a 1.5 gauge.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. If you Google like 1.5 gauge shotgun, there's a bunch of videos. But yeah, it's a homemade. I made it like maybe 5-7 years ago. It weighs 47 pounds. It shoots like 11 ounces of shot at one time.
God.
With 700 grains of black powder. It's a big, like, it's a musket basically. It's a muzzle loader. But I made it, and it. Yeah.
So it's an anti-tank gun, is what I'm hearing.
It's a conversation piece. It's fun.
Yeah.
It pushes you back a couple of feet.
Holy cow.
But yeah, that's what I would say.
All right. So I know having looked around and read some things, and I went in and listened to a few other podcasts with you on there. That you switched from STI to Glock years back. And
Yep.
you said you even had to overcome some myths or some other things about it to be able to shoot it. But what made you switch to Glock?
Well, I mean, I had shot, I started out, long story short, I started out shooting, got serious into handguns when I was 15, shot revolvers for a few years. And I'm going to go to the police academy. So I got a Beretta because a lethal weapon, that was the first one, but I shot that for a year. Didn't compete with that. Then I got an H&K. I started competition with an H&K USP Expert 45. I shot that for a year in IDPA, and then everybody's telling me you got to shoot USPSA. Well, I didn't even really know what it was at the time. This is back in like 01. And so then I go talk to some guys, like everybody's like, want to be serious? You got to shoot an STI. So I bought an STI, ended up getting 2 of them, shot them for about 3 years. Number one, I had a lot of issues just getting the guns to run right. I tried to get the triggers down to 2 pounds, and I had a lot of hammer follow and sending them to different gunsmiths, and so I was frustrated with reliability. And I had a Glock at the time. I actually had gotten from my girlfriend at the time, and it was in the off season. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go out and just shoot the IDPA classifier with it and see what I can do just for the hell of it. Because it had been put in my head that, you're not, Glock's an amateur gun, like nobody's really done too much with them or whatever. And so anyways, I went out and I shot the IDPA classifier with it, and I actually I shot the same score than I would with the STIs, which I really didn't think I was supposed to be able to do that, or that I would do that. But a light bulb went off my head, like, wow, I just picked this thing up. I shot the same score I'm shooting with an STI. And so then I shot it for about 2 weeks, and I measured everything. I've always been pretty analytical about numbers and stuff. So, and for the most part, I'm doing the same thing with this Glock. And like, man. And so I made the decision. I sold the one STI and bought 3 Glocks for the same money. I always tell people that's what happened. And that was back in 05, I think. And I just, never looked back from there. My grip kind of transformed because I get a little bit higher and further forward with my left hand. And I just kind of figured out a few different things. The trigger, the trigger is not some kind of crisp, obviously glass breaking feeling at STI, but I seem to have a little less trigger freeze issues with the Glock, even though maybe I couldn't pull the trigger quite as fast at times. But yeah, so that's how that came about, and then I just never really looked back from there.
Now, this is I wasn't even done with the other 5 questions, but I don't want to steer away from this conversation a little bit because AJ Zito?
Yeah, I remember. Pretty sure he took a class from me way back in, I was thinking in Illinois, maybe like 13 or 14 or something like that, if I remember right. I know who he is more now. I've heard of him more now, and
Okay. He was on recently, and he and I were talking, and there's been talk of departments buying STIs as their duty gun, and I was like, "Whoo, that's a lot of money for a gun that." What are your thoughts on departments going to something like that for a duty gun?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about it. Obviously, I know that it used to be STI, now it's Staccato, and they've supposedly changed some things. Now, I could not tell you a lot of the details. So obviously, I've seen, I'm out there teaching classes all the time. I've seen a lot more of the guns. I do think they're probably better than they used to be. Used to be with an STI on the box. I mean, you pretty much had to send it away to get some work done on it to have it be reliable. At least that's how it always seemed to me. I think they've kind of fixed that. I mean, to me, it's just, it would come down to obviously one, reliability, as long as obviously they work. And then the guys are good enough to shoot. Obviously the whole manual safety thing. I mean, a lot of guys are not, in my opinion, going to be up to speed enough to do that at a subconscious level, to be able to come out, as part of their grip, just taking that thumb safety off, really having it be no different than the grip safety. So that would probably be a concern of mine, handing that to guys that are not at that skill level or don't have that practice. But with certain guys, sure. I mean, at the end of the day, if it works, it functions, they can shoot it. then I wouldn't have a problem with anybody really having anything.
Okay. Well, and I know you've spent a lot of time as a law enforcement officer and you train them, so that's why I was asking.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, I would just say so much dependent on the guys. And I'm, same thing like with the red dot stuff too. But yeah.
Okay. Now, have you ever fired a Canic?
Yeah, I have. I was actually in Istanbul, Turkey a few months ago. And I'd shot them before in classes. I'm sure I've shot lots of them in classes, but I believe that's where they're made. And so a lot of guys were shooting over there. So I shot one a bit more over there, and they seemed all right to me. I can't say I pick them over Glock, but seemed like a solid gun. And there's so many more. Yeah, there's just so many more out there now. Just options with different guns that are decent. So.
Now, does it surprise you at all that people still give plastic guns a bad name in competition?
I mean, it surprised me. I guess not really. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a plastic gun. It's physics. So when you have a heavier gun with a lighter trigger, like a CZ or an STI or something, it's going to be easier for most people to shoot. I mean, it's just. So I understand why maybe some people steer away from them, because especially when you start doing distance stuff and partial targets and stuff, your average guy. I shoot a Glock. I shoot it for my style with what I do. I like it better, but I tell people all the time, I think your average person out there, probably shooting wise, will shoot better with something else. I do think those guns, the heavier steel guns, I mean, I think reliability-wise, overall, I don't think they're as good. I mean, I just across the board, and I'm just talking like hundreds and hundreds of guns, like averaging. I think that, maybe the reliability suffers a little bit on them, and you're handling. I do think a Glock, as far as drawing the gun, reloading the gun, I think it's a little bit easier. You have to have a higher level mastery of trigger control, I think, to shoot, and recoil control to shoot, any of the lighter guns with kind of heavier, maybe not as good of triggers. It's just a kind of little different skill sets.
Okay. I kind of feel like you and Nils have proven that, it's not the gun, it's the shooter, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, by far, in a way, primarily, yes, for sure. The gun does make some differences. I've done little measurement things and just a few % here or there with different triggers and things like that and consistency. But yeah, it's at least 90% shooter.
For sure. All right. Of all of your accomplishments, which one means the most to you?
Probably, I go back and forth really between two. I would say would be the actual biggest match I ever won was the IPSC World Shoot in Greece, 2011. That was like the day after I turned 30. So that was because that's kind of like our Olympics in a way. I mean, it's just a bigger deal. They did the whole podium thing, and there was I think 400 guys in the division, and so I go back and forth between that one and then when I won the Pro-Am in 14 in the shoot off against Eric Lefel. And probably, that was a lot because it was Eric Lefel, honestly. And
right.
It was 1500ths of a second. And it was just, we tied and then they go to the shoot off. And so, I don't know if I'd pick, depending on which day you'd ask me, I'd say one of those two.
And I can see why they would be 1 and 2. Depending on the day, one will be 1 and the other will be 2. But.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if you would tell people that didn't know a lot, like the IPSC World Shoot, okay, you're the world champion, you 400 guys on the other side of the world and all this stuff. But people that would know the who's who of everything, and okay, it would probably be the Pro-Am. It wasn't just Eric. It was stacked that year. There was a lot of the names there. I think they had the most pros that year. So there was a lot of the big name guys there that year, and that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, but at the same time, it was. That shoot off was literally head to head. I mean, you did it one after the other.
Yeah.
But there was way more pressure than a normal IPSC/USPSA match, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely different. I mean, the Pro-Am style, I shot that for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years in a row, whatever it was. And just the way they did that and just how it built up there, and we tied at the end, and it was very dramatic. And then the fact that it was on, that it was on video too. So that made it pretty neat.
I actually saw it recently. I was like, oh my gosh. I was waiting for your time to pop up, and I was like, 15/100ths of a second. Holy cow.
Because he shot it for, he had 2 pickups, and he shot fast. And I'm like, it was going to be faster than my consistent pace. So I'm like, I got every one here. I'm just going to go. If I hit every one of them, I think I can do it. And I felt that in the moment. And some days it's your day, some days it's not. That day just felt like my day. I just really felt it, and that worked out. And other days it didn't. But I'm happy to have that one.
Okay, yeah, that was impressive. All right,
thanks.
So we have, through the almost 90 episodes we've done now, we're finding a trend with world and national champions. I know for a fact you've met one of the criteria. One, you were born and raised on a farm.
Yep, I definitely was.
Were you homeschooled?
I wasn't homeschooled. I didn't really get to town a whole. I didn't really get to town a whole lot. I lived pretty far from town, and it was kind of before all the cell phone, internet stuff. So I wasn't homeschooled. I did go to school, country school, and then in town. But I was a little more isolated than most people were, until I was old enough to drive and get out on my own and stuff.
Okay. And how tall are you?
How tall I am? 6'1", with no shoes.
There's 2 out of 3. You meet 2 out of 3.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. We have found that people that grow up on a farm, they're homeschooled, and they're 6 feet or taller, all seem to be inclined to be a world or national champion. We don't know what it is, but something in the water.
There probably is, I guess, a little more likelihood of that. I could see that. Now,
on your bio on your website, vogeldynamics.com, which is scrolling across the bottom there, says you were heavily involved in shooting, hunting, and outdoors at a very young age. So how young were you when you first started just shooting, period?
Well, I remember I always liked guns and stuff since I was very little. I got my first BB gun when I was 6 years old. I remember that. And my dad took me out in the barn to shoot sparrows with it. So that was, ever since then, I think I was kind of a constant companion. And then when I was 9, I was allowed to get my first shotgun. And then I started hunting. And that's a lot of what I did when I was younger. I was out by myself at 9 years old hunting squirrels and rabbits and stuff. And then I was never allowed to have a handgun nearly as young as a long gun. Like a shotgun at a 22, again, 9 years old, 10, 11, 12, all the way up through. But Dad wouldn't let me have a handgun, and kind of understandably, because, a little more dangerous, obviously, to have an accident with. So I got my first handgun when I was 15, and I actually bought it against my parents' wishes. I actually went somewhere and I bought it myself at this like flea market type place. And I hid it for a couple months until they found out about it. And then they took it away for a short period of time and gave it back. And then that's when I really got into it. I think, say 15, I got my first handgun, and read a book called Combat Handgunning by Chuck Taylor. I always tell people, and that was back before Columbine. You could do reports and stuff. Anytime you could pick your topic and to do some report in school, it was always about that. And they let me do it back then. And so that's really how I got started. It was all my main thing. I played baseball, but hunting and shooting were always the main thing that I was into.
Okay. Now that wasn't that revolver you bought that had like the 9-inch barrel?
So that wasn't my very first one. My first one was a 357. It was a Smith & Wesson model 19, 4-inch 357. And I actually recently just got it back. I sold it to a buddy at the time in order to get the money to buy a Dirty Harry gun, because I got into the 44 Magnum.
Okay, yeah.
And and so then I ended up having the long-barreled one was my second 44 Magnum. I had problems with the first one, but that long-barreled 8 3/8 inch 629, I bought that when I was 17. I'll never sell that thing. that still has kind of a special place in my collection. I don't get it out too much, but yeah.
Okay.
I like that one.
So from what before I get there, now, did you do it other than hunting? I mean, hunting's a lot. I don't know how big exactly your farm is, but what other, did you go like camping? Did you stay outdoors overnight when you were doing these hunting trips, or when you were younger?
I mean, a little bit, but it was never that much, I guess. My farm family, so we didn't really take too many vacations because you could with the animals and everything. So the majority of my hunting, especially when I was younger, was what was somewhat around home. You know, you had all the small game stuff. We coon hunted a lot, and then deer season with guns was only about a week in Ohio. So,
oh wow,
that was So it was just kind of normal hunting stuff around home. I come from family farm, so extended family. We had quite a bit of land to hunt, so I did have that. I would go down the river a lot. I still do that. Hunt actually off the river in a canoe or a kayak. The river's behind my house. So, but yeah, it wasn't anything extravagant. It was with
and as I understand it, that farm's been in your family since the Civil War?
Yeah, a little bit after that. Different parts of, like, right across the road, my great-great-great-grandfather, who my road is named after, bought the farm in 1887. So a lot of, and then another farm about in the 1880s. So a little bit after the Civil War, but not too far off.
Yeah, it's still almost 140 years ago. So
yeah, about that.
Wow. Okay. Now, once you graduated high school, you went into a 2-year police academy program. So I know you were a valedictorian there, but what did you do for the year between 20 and 21?
Well, I got out, so probably similar now. You could go through the police academy, which was like 6 months, or you go through a 2-year and get a degree with it. And then you got out and you had the police academy and a degree. And from the time you graduated police academy, you had a year to get hired. So I knew if going out of high school, if I did the 2-year thing, I would get out. I had about 6 months from the time I graduated high school until I graduated the police academy until I turned 21. So I had like 3 jobs in between. Yeah. And so it wasn't, you could even actually apply before. So there really wasn't that much time there. I mowed roads for the county for 2 or 3 years when I was in college. I worked for the Farm Service Agency. I would measure farmland and grain bins, and it was like an agriculture job. And then I got hired part-time when I turned 21, and did about a year part-time, and I got a real job, full-time police officer. I think that was right when I turned 22. So, and then then did pretty much all of my 20s as a full-time cop.
So at what point in there did you find IDPA and competition shooting?
So I started, again, when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, right in there. I hadn't shot any matches, but I was reading about all this stuff, and I was doing drills and stuff. I was having my friends over, and we were timing each other and doing all this stuff back on the farm. And then I used to read all the gun magazines back then. Gun magazine, cover to cover. I was real big on that. And so I read about IDPA, and I kind of researched it before. Okay, well, there's a match like an hour away. I was 19. I was just starting the police academy, I believe, or in the police academy, when I actually went and shot my first IDPA match. And I had read about it a little bit before, so I wasn't showing up totally, not knowing what I was doing. I know I'd already been shooting handguns pretty regularly for 3 or 4 years. And so, I showed up, first match, ended up actually winning the match, which to this day, really probably I got as much of a high off of that because I had no idea if I was any good. Like I'm better than my friends and stuff and family a lot, but I don't no idea. I'm going to go and shoot a match against men, and I don't know how I'm going to do. I think there was actually 19 guys there, and the results a few days later, and I won by a decent amount. And then wow, I kept going back, and so I started kind of throughout the whole police academy. I was shooting IDPA, and then I think pretty much right when I was 20. right when I got out, right about the same time I graduated the police academy, I went and shot a couple of state matches, state championships, and I won one of them. The first one I lost by 4/100ths of a second. Never forget that.
Wow!
I shot a no shoot on the last day. It was the Ohio State USPSA Championship 2002. And the last state, like I came around the corner and I shot a no shoot. I didn't miss and hit the no shoot. Like I center punched 2 shots in the no shoot, and I lost.
Take that.
I lost by 4/100ths of a second, and I was like, man, I could have been a state champion, but that kind of sparked me to go the next month and then shoot the West Virginia State Championship, which I won that actually against a little bit more competition, and so that was like, wow, that really, like I'm young, I did this well already. I beat a guy that was 3rd in the nationals at that time, and to just really like maybe I could be a national champion or a world champion, and that just I was very, very gung ho from that point, and before that, but especially at that point.
Yeah, I guess so. Kind of lit that fire when you realized how good you were, and so the potential is within reach.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what, it's what kept me going, because there was always a light at the end of the tunnel. I never really felt like, wow, I could never do that. Like it was, and it's good for me that I started out. I didn't jump right in to the big. I mean, I shot 3 or 4 years before I ever even went to a match, and then I shot regular matches for a year before I went to a state championship, and then I shot state championships for two or 3 years before I went to nationals. So by the time I went to nationals, like I was ready to win. I was ready to, not necessarily walk in and win right away. I was very close to, though, but I was there. So right. I in a way, I don't know. In a way, I think that was good mentally for me. Maybe I would have done more if I'd have jumped in earlier, but then it could have not been that way too. So depending on how you look at it. Okay. And there was not as much back then. I mean, I act like it's forever ago, but still, it was over 20 years ago. And the level was not what it is now. Like, I don't know. Somebody that would have been top 10 at nationals 20 years ago probably wouldn't make top 30 now. So it's a little different. There's more people doing it. Knowledge is out there more. And
it's evolved, I guess, is what you would say.
Yeah. You just have, I don't necessarily want to say your top end is any better necessarily, but you definitely have a larger number of guys that are like at a pretty high level compared to some years back.
Yeah. And when you look at like nationals last year, a lot of those, you have 4 or 5 different guys who were shooting. You're like, it could be any one of these guys who wins.
Yeah, sure. Could be depending on the match, the division, who's there. I mean, it's just a toss up. Sometimes there's 6 or 8 guys that are all good enough to win it, and on a given day or days.
Yeah, I mean, like Max had won Carry Optics for like 4 or 5 years in a row, and then he was 4th last year.
Yeah.
So I agree that the amount of competition coming up these days is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, it's just sometimes it's the difference between 1st or 2nd and 4th or 5th or even down the line further than that is not much. It's a couple of shots sometimes, one way or the other.
Now, did I think I remember you said you've never taken a class from anybody, so you learned all this on your own.
I learned a lot indirectly through people. So I read a lot of books, watched a lot of videos. I've always been interested in what other guys had to say, and I still do try to keep up on that. But I other than the SWAT schools and stuff through being a cop, I've never really went and signed up and taken a class from somebody else, like some other top shooter. Not to say I haven't learned a lot from them, because I have. But as far as actually taking a class like that, no.
Okay. So
I just don't think it was quite as much. I don't know. I don't. I don't even, and I probably would have. Like, I'm thinking back to time periods between 2000 and say 2001 to 2008, kind of before whatever. I probably totally would have, but I don't remember. It wasn't nearly what it is now. I don't remember ever even having the opportunity to go. It was never about, oh, so-and-so's coming here and I wish I had the money or wish I had the time. I just never even knew about it. It probably was out there somewhat, but had I been coming up now, I probably would. But then by that time, like, I'm there and already won the nationals and everything. And I knew these guys, personally. I got to know them. And so, like, I'm kind of learning through them indirectly, but I think that's probably why, if I had to say.
Yeah. The internet wasn't quite as prolific as it is today, where where everybody is and what they're doing all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's just totally different, for sure.
Yeah. Now, what is this about being a grandmaster in open with an iron-sighted Glock 17?
Well, yeah. Earlier on, made grandmaster. I was when I got into USPSA. I'd already been master in IDPA. That was before they had distinguished master, and I'd won some state championships and stuff. And getting USPSA was one of the big goals, because just like grandmaster, that sounds really cool. I got to do that. So I made it in limited, and then that was with an STI. I switched to Glock, made it in production. So I'm thinking, okay, pretty much I'm going to shoot production limited, but it would be cool to like see if I can make grandmaster in some other divisions. And they had my local club, they would have some special classifier matches. So I think I did limited 10 first, and then at the time the divisions aren't the same as they are now. But like, open was about the only one left I could possibly do with a Glock. So you got to shoot. The score's a bit higher, so I set up a gun, and it was Glock 17. It had a comp on it. It had the long, I think, SJC comp, and I developed some 9 major loads. And for the classifiers that we're shooting, like, man, I think I can shoot this just as good with irons for what they were. And so it was kind of one of those. I threw it on the gun. I shot it a couple of weeks before leading up to the match. And I did it. I think it took me I didn't do it the first time in open. In limited 10 I did. But in open, I think I shot it and I ended up with high 80s or something. And then by the time the next special classifier match came around, I went. And then the second special classifier match, I got a couple good scores in there and then made it. But so it was an open gun. It just didn't have a dot. It was an iron sight 17.
That still sounds unfair.
But it was, and it worked out.
Oh goodness! Now, have you ever competed with a dot on a gun?
Just at some club matches. There for a while, I was shooting. I had like an indoor league, and I was shooting that a bit. And so I would go there, and I would shoot my limited gun, and then you could pay and just do the whole thing again. And then I shot it with an open gun, and by then I was using I might have been the same 17, but I had a dot on it then. And it was, I did. I remember, because I would just kind of compare myself. What's my limited score versus my open score? And, it was, but if I did it right, I shoot about 10% better with the open gun. Although I think I went a little faster. I was never quite as consistent with it. And a lot of the reason I kind of lost interest in open, I could never get the guns. And granted, I know I shot Glocks, open guns, but I could never get them to be as reliable as the irons. Like, when you put a comp on it, I'm not saying it wouldn't run, but it would not run as consistent. I couldn't just go hundreds and hundreds and thousands of rounds with zero malfunctions. It would just be once every couple hundred rounds or something, some kind of stovepipe, and you just couldn't seem to completely get rid of that. And I'm just so picky about that kind of thing. I'll lose interest if I can't get the gun to work right. I just don't want to. I don't want to do it. Seriously,
that brings up something you said before too, that you don't care for aftermarket barrels for Glock. You said they're not reliable.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, I'm sure you can find some that are, but overall, across hundreds of them, I've just seen yeah, I've definitely seen more malfunctions and worse reliability with aftermarket barrels and Glocks versus the stock barrel. I think it's just, the tighter tolerances, then that's what you're gonna have. I've seen a lot more issues just with nowadays. You got the different slides in the frames even, and overall, I have definitely seen them be less reliable. So I do a decent amount to my guns, but the slides, the barrels, the frames are stock, and that's what I like.
Is that, I know you said the Gen 3 is your favorite because they're easier to work on, but do you also find that is the generation where the reliability tends to drop off a little bit? Like that's a little bit more on that, or?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that. I think in the stock form, I can't say that a Gen 3, 4, or 5 or any of them are any more or less reliable.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know that I would say. I don't know that I would say the reliability thing. Obviously I started out earlier and have a bunch of 3s, and I've never, if I thought a 4 or 5 was better and I would shoot it better, you bet I would have them. But I don't for me. Now I just think it's just the way it is, the marketing trend. Everybody wants something new. So you have a huge percentage of people, they will buy something if it's new. It doesn't matter if it's better or not. They will buy it because it's new. I'm not really one of those guys. Like, you have to prove it to me that this is an improvement that is better, and then I'm all about it. I'm not one of those guys that's stuck in the past and like, oh, and all that. But it's got to be provable to me. And then just working on with the triggers and stuff. And the one thing I don't like, the 3 still have a bigger opening in the back, like the cavity for like Seattle Slug or whatnot, and Magwells, and I just like. Yeah, I like that, and kind of the cutout in the front. And so, yeah, I for the most part still have about all 3s, and that's what I use.
Okay. Yeah, I saw you like the Seattle Slug on the back, and I had never noticed. I've shot Glocks, but I've never owned one, so I didn't even realize one of the models had that cutout at the front of the magwell.
Yeah, to me, that's a big deal. It's just, I think the older 3s had that, and then the newer 3s didn't, and the 4s, and then there were some 5s that did. But it's just, I'm so used to loading a stock magazine, and it's you can't load a stock magazine very well with a magwell on there. So I really I prefer not to have a magwell. The only reason I have a magwell on some of my guns is like limited guns or whatever, it was for weight. But so just, yeah, with the stock magazine, the way it goes in my hand, with the Seattle Slug or some kind of plug in the back, and with the little half moon shaped cutout in the front, it's a lot more consistent to reload.
Interesting that you just said you like the magwell for the weight. Seems like a lot of guns these days, people are either creating a plug to actually go up into the grip for weight, like a titanium piece, or even like with Canic, you can get a brass back strap to add weight to the grip. Now, have you shot anything like that, or do you just like the weight at the bottom?
Well, I mean, I would like weight anywhere. It was more when with a 9, honestly, it doesn't make much difference. But with a 40, limited and standard, I was trying to get my Glocks to weigh more like what an STI weighed. So basically, wherever I can get weight on it, between having a heavier magwell, obviously, even with a magwell, you can have the section that sticks up into the plug area, so you got some weight up into there too, and then having a lightweight, like they've changed the rules now, but you could have a weight or a thumb rest. So between the weight I could get up front with the light cavity and the plug, like I could get a Glock, and I like the 24 for limited, but a Glock that would normally weigh maybe 30 ounces, you can get that thing up, 45 ounces. Like more and I could tell a difference on the harder stuff. Like if you're just shooting 10 yards, 15 yards, full targets, not so much. When you shoot a lot of, partials at distance and stuff like that, it's just more forgiving with that weight. You can, you don't have to follow through quite as much. It's almost like if you just kind of shank, sometimes you feel yourself kind of shank a shot. And it's like, at a certain point, it's like with a heavy gun, you're still getting that hit. With a light gun, it's a miss.
Gotcha.
You can feel that sometimes. So
okay,
and you could shoot a little bit faster at distance. I would notice it more, and that's a lot of times that's what it came down to, especially like the IPSC world shoots and stuff. Man, I mean, moving targets at further away, partial targets farther away. A lot of times it comes down to, somebody's going to have a mic on that target, and the other guy's not, and that's going to make. So often, that's what made the difference.
Okay.
But yeah.
Now you seem to have stopped competing, at least on a larger scale.
Yeah. So I'm kind of, yeah. I'm not exactly sure where I'm at, but yeah, I have not the last couple of years really. With the nationals and everything, man, I'm just gone more the teaching route, which I have done, and there's just a lot of reasons for that, and something might change, but I just haven't had the pull to go out and shoot nationals as much and whatnot. Just a lot of reasons, man. I mean, for I did it. I mean, how many times do I have to do it, sort of thing. To me, this is what I tell people, and it probably surprises a lot of people and sounds kind of crazy, but even from the very beginning, I never really shot matches for fun. I like shooting. I think it'll always be my life. It was never a casual thing for me. It was shooting is my passion and everything, but the match was a test. I went there. I put more pressure on myself at those things than I did at my job. So it's not like, I think to 95% of people, it's like their way of, whatever, kind of getting away from the wife on the weekend and playing golf or whatnot. It was never that to me. It was 100% serious. I'm going there to win from the very beginning. And I did it for 20 years, won about everything there was to win almost. And at a certain point, and I'm a little more independent too. So which I've with classes and everything, I don't have, I don't have a bunch of people telling me what I have to do. Like, you have to shoot this many matches and this is in your contract and all this stuff. Like I've never really wanted that. I had more of that at times. But I got to the point where I want to do what I want to do. And now it's like, yeah, I can go shoot a match that I've already won 5 times. And then it's like, if I win, it's like nobody cares anymore. I'll be honest with you. That's how I feel kind of. If I win, nobody cares anymore. It's like, you don't win, then, what happened? And, sort of thing. Yeah. And it's just like, there's less to gain, but there's still everything to lose, sort of thing. And I kind of don't like saying that, but there's a little bit of that's truth. So, now I'm still, and then go over here and teach a class, which I actually enjoy more. And then also actually make money at it. And like, why would I not do that instead? I'm still, I'm still doing it. I'm still out there shooting about as much as ever and doing the same sorts of things. But I guess I just don't feel that pull to go shoot all the matches like I used to. And I think it's kind of a provable thing too. I used to feel like, I right or wrong, or call me whatever you want, but it's like, I don't feel like I really have anything left to prove. And I felt like I always did. Like, I got to keep proving. I got to prove it. And then at a certain point, like, do I really have to keep? And I understand if I worked for a gun company or something and more of an industry guy, I would pretty much have to do that whether I wanted to or not. I can tell you a lot of guys that don't really want to keep doing that, but they have to keep doing that because it's part of their job. I don't. Right. I'm not one of those guys. I've kind of set things up to where I guess I'm a little more independent, and not right or wrong one way or the other, but that's how I like it. So
was any of that you just wanting to prove to yourself that maybe you still had it, that you could still win it back then?
You're talking when?
Well, like before you got out of competition, when you were shooting, do you feel like towards the end you were doing it just to confirm to yourself that you could still win those things? Or
Yeah, I mean, it was that, and then it was just the expectations of other people. Like I just kind of
okay.
felt like, well, you're having to you're shooting nationals, right? And like the last few years, I didn't want to be there as much as I did before. I mean, and I did it because I thought I was supposed to do it, and I felt I would kind of be letting other people down if I didn't. And then, yeah, it got to the point where the first time I remember, it was the first time I missed nationals. I got a chance to go to Abu Dhabi for the first time, and it was just like great experience. Went over there. I was over there 3 different times. Might be going back. Great experience. Like the other side of the world, all this stuff. Made a bunch of money, and it was just like, man, I enjoyed that so much more than I did shooting the nationals for the 14th time. And I obviously made money instead of spent money. So it's like, why can't I just do this now more? I don't really have to. Why do I have to do that? Like, I don't really necessarily have to do that. So it's something like that. But I think a lot of people I don't know if they understand that it's, to most of the top shooters, especially guys that have won, nationals and stuff a bunch of times, and just the it's not a vacation. It's
right. It's a chore.
It can become that. And again, not to say
right.
I don't, because I totally have a passion for shooting, and I'd be doing this stuff even though I'm not really shooting nationals right now, but I am still practicing. I'm still dry firing. I know what I can do, and I'm still keeping that alive. I'm just maybe not testing it in public as much as I used to. So
yeah, you're still shooting bumblebees out of the air.
Well, yeah, that kind of stuff is fun to me. Just different.
different, it's a totally different challenge.
Oddball things like that, or the cigarette thing, or the different,
yeah.
And I'm still shooting in classes and stuff. Obviously, I'm demoing what I do in front of everybody. I'm doing shoot offs against people, and I'm still putting it on the line, sort of thing. It's just different different type.
I totally get it. There was a guy we had on here, Jason Bradley. He was second at nationals in 2020 to Max, and then he got burned out. He got burned out right after that. He hasn't stopped shooting, but I kind of compare him to you. He wasn't a young guy when he went to nationals and did that stuff, but he enjoys the funner parts of shooting and not necessarily the chore of nationals and all of that. So he likes to do like some trick shooting stuff, and he'll post videos of things like that on occasion.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah, it's it's to have fun with it. And I obviously I put a lot of pressure on myself for years, and that's why I did well. Because I put pressure on myself, because I cared, because I didn't leave things to chance. But it takes a toll too. And now, I'm not that old, but I'm 40, and I'm just kind of at a point in my life where I feel I owe it to myself to live a little bit more and to do a little bit more what I want. And I'm in a position more, monetarily wise and career wise to be able to do more what I want than I used to be. So that's, different things for different people.
All right. So now I want to get into your training stuff that you've gotten into. Was your world championship the catalyst for you to get out of law enforcement and then do the training stuff full time?
If I had to pick one thing, yes and no, because I've wondered, like, if I wouldn't have won the world shooting Greece, there's a good chance I would have still done what I'm doing. But it was, to me, I always tell people, I got into it out of high school. The first 5 to 7 years was total hobby for me, like it is for most people. I'm spending all my money on bullets, match fees, travel. I'm shorting every area in my life, living in a smaller house, living in cars,
eating ramen,
sleeping in my car, not having vacations. I literally didn't use any vacations for anything other than shooting for a long time. And 5 to 7 years, kind of mid-20s, that's kind of about when I won nationals the first time. and I got some attention, some sponsors. And so then I'm like breaking even. And then going forward from that, some people started asking me to do classes. I didn't advertise for it or wasn't planning. People just started asking me to do them. I saw the opportunity, started doing them, started to become an actual second job. I started to make money at shooting. And then it got to the point, and that's kind of when I won the world shoot. I was 29, 30, that's 2011. Before that point, I could kind of finagle my schedule to do class and all stuff. After that point, I had a little more interest, and I was going to start to have to turn stuff down because the work wouldn't give me unpaid leave. If they would have given me unpaid leave, I'd have been a cop for longer. But I remember I got asked to go to Africa and Norway. And right after I won the world shoot, I'm getting some offers like, okay, and I'm literally thinking, okay, I could go in 2 trips, in 2-week trips, I could make more money than I could bring home in a year at the police department. And wow. I was going to have to start. That's just how I would not that I was making that much money at the police department, but when I would have to, and it came down to the fact that I was going to have to start turning some of this stuff down. I remember being on a plane ride back from Ecuador. It was March. I went there for a class too. March 2012, and I'm on the airplane and I'm looking at my notes and stuff. My biggest stress in my life is how am I going to pay people to work for me and get time off work? And I took a piece of paper out and I drew a line down the center and I started writing numbers. And like, this is what I'm getting shooting wise, and this is what I could be making. This is what I'm getting from the police. And when I actually did the math and looked at the numbers, it made more sense than what I thought it did thinking about it. And that's when I made the decision on the airplane. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to leave. I mean, I went back, put in my notice, and that's been over 10 years ago. And then it's been, so that's been great. And it's, so I don't know that it'd be hard for me to go back, kind of my own boss. And it's things, there's times when I wasn't as busy and there's times when I'm really busy, but it's worked out pretty well.
It all balances out. Yeah. So now you were just recently at TTPOA. I saw you had even posted something about the Ohio SWAT conference. I wrote an article for 2 articles for TTPOA. You were probably 14 or 15. Yeah, maybe 15 or 16, somewhere through there. But anyway, okay. Are there any other like law enforcement conferences you go to around the country, or are those the 2 big ones?
Those, and I've done them a few years, not every year, hit or miss. So I've done Texas, I've done Ohio, I've done Indiana. It's been a few years since I did Indiana. I'm thinking those are the only like SWAT conferences that I have statewide that I have done, as far as like state conferences. So it kind of depends on how my schedule would work out, and when would they reach out to me and what I have on my calendar and all that. But I think that's what I've done as far as the state conferences.
Like when you were at TTPO, okay. When you were at TTPOA, like what did they ask you to do there?
Well, I mean, it's just you go there. It's and I probably don't know all the events that go on, but you're teaching a couple days of classes. So I think I did the same in Texas and Ohio. I did 2 separate 1-day classes, and it's 4 or 5 day event or whatever it is. So then they'll have another day where there's like a speaker and then the vendor show, and I'm there hanging out at that, mingling with people. And I know obviously no different people, and that's always good industry wise. You're just the people and talk to. So that's all part of that. But you're, as far as what work wise, that's what I'm there to do is.
So that's like range classes. You're doing it on the range, or?
Yeah. It was very, very similar to what I would be doing anyways with kind of more normal classes. Gotcha. It's just, you're on a range with whatever, 8, 10, 12, 15 guys, sometimes more than that, depending on the range, and, all day on the range shooting 400 or 500 rounds.
Where you normally live anyway. So
yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I'm just kind of doing what I would normally do.
Until next time,
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.